Somebody took 5 brand new engines, identical motors, and poured a different additive into each one's oil, just to see which destroyed the engine fastest. And here's the part that should stick with you. The fastest killer of the 5 wasn't sabotage. It wasn't sugar poured in by an angry neighbor. It wasn't sand or metal filings. It was a product sold on a shelf to help your engine, valve grinding compound, the stuff marketed to clean up burrs and corrosion and smooth your valves. In the oil, that helpful product killed a brand new motor in 2 minutes and 7 seconds. And when they tore it down, the piston rings were welded solid, the worst cylinder damage of all 5 engines. The thing sold to help was the thing that killed fastest, by a mile. My name's Walt Renner. A few years back, I paid extra for a product with the best reviews I could find, and it cost me real money when those reviews turned out not to be testing anything. So now, I don't trust the front of a bottle. That teardown I just described, I didn't run it. I went looking for somebody who'd already poured additives into real engines until they died, and torn them all down, because that's worth more than any claim on a package. For the fuel side, which is what this video is really about, I went digging through what the automakers themselves put in writing. No sponsors, no additive company paying me to point you at their bottle. Now hold that image, because I need to be straight about what you just heard. That was the oil side of the aisle, where the damage happens fast enough to watch on a stopwatch. This video isn't about oil. It's about the bottles one shelf over, the fuel additives, the octane boosters and injector cleaners you pour in your gas tank. And they run the exact same trap. The one that works best is the one the car makers themselves tell you, in writing, to never put in your tank. Except here, you don't get to watch it happen in 2 minutes. It happens one molecule at a time, over years, until the day it isn't quiet anymore. You're going to hear which fuel additives are doing that, and the 2 that are actually worth your money. And one of those 2 isn't even a bottle. Here's why this aisle robs you in both directions. Either you buy a bottle that slowly damages your engine while promising to save it, or you buy one that does absolutely nothing and you thank it for taking your money. And almost nobody can tell the 2 apart, because every bottle on that shelf makes the identical promise on the front. Cleans your engine, boosts your power, restores your mileage. The front is marketing. The truth is on the back, in an ingredient list most people never flip over to read. Before I go any further, I want to mention something once, because it matters, and then I won't bring it up again. There's more to how I actually run these investigations than fits into any single video. The full breakdown of how I dig into a product before I trust it, how I track down who ran the real test and verify it before any of it goes in a script, and the stuff that gets ruled out before it ever makes a list. I wrote all of it up on my website, and the link's just below. I won't mention it again. If it interests you, it's there. Now here's the reframe that changes how you read every one of these labels for the rest of your life. Every bottle in that aisle makes the same promise on the front. What decides whether it keeps that promise isn't the brand, or the price, or how big the claim is. It comes down to one ingredient on the back. Most of the bottles don't have it, and they leave it out on purpose, because the ingredient that actually works costs the company more to put in. So a big chunk of that shelf is quietly hurting your engine, and most of the rest is doing nothing at all. Only 2 things in this entire category are worth your money, and one of those 2 isn't sold in a bottle. Let's start with the one that's just wasting your cash. Number 4 on the avoid list. The cheap injector cleaner that does nothing. Walk the aisle and you'll see a dozen bottles that say Fuel System Cleaner for $5 or $6. Most of them are built around a cheap detergent chemistry the industry calls PBA or PIBA. And here's the problem with it. That cheap chemistry can only clean the very tip of the injector. It cannot survive the heat deeper in the engine, so it never touches your intake valves or your combustion chamber, which is exactly where the deposits that rob your power actually build up. There's an older version of this chemistry that's even worse, because it can leave a sticky residue of its own behind, so you're paying to add gunk while trying to remove it. Here's why that matters to you. You pour it in, you feel good about taking care of your car, and the deposits that are actually choking your engine are sitting in a spot that bottle chemically cannot reach. It isn't cleaning your engine. It's rinsing the doorknob and calling it mopping the floor. It's not damaging anything, it's just doing nothing and charging you for the feeling of doing something. And notice what that means, because it's the whole racket of this aisle in one line. The cheapest bottle on the shelf and the most useless bottle on the shelf are very often the same bottle. You didn't get robbed by damage this time. You got robbed by nothing, which is somehow worse, because at least damage leaves a mark. That's the harmless one. The next three actually hurt the engine, and this is where it turns. Number 3. Acetone. Somewhere along the way, the internet decided acetone was free horsepower, a secret the fuel companies didn't want you to know. A few ounces in the tank for more mileage and more power, and people pour it in by the bottle on the strength of a forum post. Here's what acetone actually is. It's a solvent, the same family of chemical as nail polish remover, and its whole job in life is to dissolve things. That's not a side effect, that's the entire function of the chemical. Which means for you, the moment it's in your tank in any real quantity, it goes looking for things to dissolve. And it does not know the difference between the gunk you want gone and the rubber seals, the plastic lines, and the gaskets you very much need it to leave alone. I went looking at what the people who actually work on engines say about this, not the guys selling the idea. And a diesel mechanic with 15 years in the trade laid it out plainly. In a diesel, acetone bonds with the water already in your fuel and carries it straight into the injection pump, which is the one place you spent good money keeping dry with a water separator. Acetone walks the water right past that separator and into the pump, where it causes rust and corrosion, and it leads to hanging injectors and cylinder washout. Think about that. The additive defeats the very part your fuel system uses to protect itself. And the mileage bump they're all chasing? A dozen real tests have never been able to find it. So they're dissolving their own fuel systems from the inside to chase a number that isn't there. That's the internet's mistake. The next one is what the weekend racers do to themselves on purpose. Number 2. Xylene and toluene. These are the hardcore ones, the solvents that guys mix into pump gas at home to fake race fuel and bump their octane on the cheap. And they do raise octane, that part is real, which is exactly why the trick spreads, because the first thing it does is work. But here's the mechanism nobody mentions on the forum thread where they learned it. Xylene and toluene are aggressive solvents, even harsher on your fuel system than the acetone I just walked you through. They attack and deteriorate the rubber and plastic components in your fuel lines and seals, the same parts, faster. And here's the cruel twist. They cake carbon into your combustion chamber, and carbon buildup is one of the leading causes of engine knock, which is the exact problem higher octane was supposed to prevent. So the homebrew octane fix quietly creates the conditions for the knock it was meant to stop. Which means for you, the trick trades a few points of octane today for a fuel system that's slowly coming apart and a combustion chamber filling with the very deposits that cause pre-ignition. You can buy real, properly formulated race fuel for what your engine is actually worth to you. What these guys are doing instead is paying a little now and a lot later and calling it a hack. That's the DIY trap. Now here's the one that ties this whole video together, and it's the one that should genuinely bother you. Number 1 on the avoid list: MMT octane boosters. And this is the fuel aisle twin of that grinding compound from the very start of this video, so stay with me, because this is the whole point. Remember the additive that worked, the one sold to help that killed the engine fastest? MMT is the fuel version of that same paradox. Here's what makes it so sneaky. MMT actually works. It genuinely raises your octane. It really does what the bottle promises. And that's exactly why the cheap octane boosters use it, because it's the ingredient that delivers. But MMT is a metal. The full name is a mouthful, but the key word is manganese, an actual metal dissolved into your fuel. And when you burn a metal, it doesn't just vanish out the tailpipe. It leaves metal behind. Let me walk you through what that metal actually does, slowly, because this is the part the label will never tell you, and it's the same shape as that grinding compound from the top of this video. Remember, the grinding compound worked too. It really did smooth metal. It just ground up the engine doing it. MMT is that same trap in a gas can. Every time that fuel fires in the cylinder, the manganese in it burns. And a burning metal doesn't disappear out the tailpipe the way gasoline does. It leaves a hard metal oxide deposit behind, an orange crust. And that crust coats the inside of your combustion chamber and bakes onto your spark plugs. Your plugs foul faster, which means you're buying plugs and doing tune-ups sooner than you should. That orange residue keeps building on the surfaces that are supposed to stay clean, changing how your engine burns fuel. And downstream, your emission system, the catalytic converter and the oxygen sensors, has to breathe all of that manganese passing through it, and it chokes on it over time. That's a catalytic converter and a set of sensors, some of the most expensive hardware on the car to replace, quietly being poisoned by the additive you bought to help. So the additive that actually delivered on its promise is coating your engine in metal on the way to delivering it. Here's the part that should really bother you. This isn't the additive that fails you. This is the one that works. And the car makers know exactly what it costs you. Honda puts it in writing, in the owner's manual. Do not use gasoline containing MMT because it contaminates the engine and the emission system. And, in their own words, damage caused by it may not be covered under warranty. Read that twice. The additive works. The car maker knows it works. And the car maker is telling you that if it wrecks your emissions system, you're paying for it yourself, not them. The company selling the booster knows the same thing Honda knows. They sell it anyway, because it works fits on a label, and it works and here's the metal it leaves in your engine does not. So that's the avoid list. The cheap cleaner that does nothing and robs you with a bottle of almost water. Acetone, the internet myth that dissolves your fuel system, chasing mileage that isn't there. Xylene and toluene, the homebrew race fuel that eats your seals and cakes your chamber. And MMT, the booster that actually works and coats your engine in metal and voids your warranty doing it. Every one of them fails the same simple test. Either it can't do what it claims, or what it actually does to your engine is nothing like what the front of the bottle promised. Now let me show you the only two things in this entire aisle that pass that test, because you should know what to actually reach for. The first one that's worth your money is a real PEA cleaner. PEA, polyetheramine, is the ingredient I told you decides everything, and this is where that promise pays off. Remember the one word that separates the bottle that works from the bottle that does nothing? This is it. PEA is the one detergent chemistry that survives the heat deep in your engine, past 300 degrees Celsius. And that single fact is why it works when the cheap stuff can't. The cheap chemistry burns off before it gets anywhere important. PEA rides the fuel all the way through, so it actually cleans your injector tips and your intake valves and your combustion chamber, all three, the places the deposits that rob your power actually live. The way it works is almost elegant. One end of the molecule grabs onto the carbon and varnish. The other end lifts it off and carries it into the fuel stream to burn away clean. No residue left behind. The quality bottles run 25 to 35% PEA, and they're recommended by actual car makers, names like BMW and Audi. You'll know it by names like Techron and Redline. But I care more about the ingredient than the brand, because the ingredient is the thing doing the work. One tip on using it right, because even the good bottle can be used wrong. Run it in a near-empty tank so it goes in concentrated instead of watered down across a full tank. And do it right before an oil change, because a heavy dose of PEA can work its way down past the rings into your oil, and you want to drain that out fresh afterward. Used that way, it's the one bottle in the aisle that earns its price. It's the real thing all those $5 bottles are only pretending to be. And the second thing worth your money is the one nobody in that aisle wants to tell you about, because there's no bottle to sell you. It's the gas itself. Top-tier gasoline, the stuff sold at the stations that meet the higher detergent standard, already has cleaning additive dissolved right into it, in the fuel, every single fill-up. Not once a season when you remember to buy a bottle, every mile you drive. And here's the honest truth the additive companies would rather you never heard. If you're already running top-tier gas, you mostly don't need a bottle at all. The detergent work you're trying to buy in a $15 bottle is already happening in the tank, for free, if you just picked the right pump. Think about what that means for the whole aisle. The best fuel additive on the market isn't in the aisle. It's already dissolved in the good gasoline you could be pumping anyway. It costs you nothing extra over the cheap gas at the discount station. It works continuously instead of once in a while. And nobody builds an end cap display around it, because you can't ring up a bottle of something that's already in the fuel. That's the pattern one more time, the same one from the very start of this video. The answer that actually protects your engine is the one with no profit margin on it, so it's the one nobody's standing in the aisle to sell you. So here's what I want you to do, and it takes 10 seconds standing in that aisle. Before anything goes in your tank, flip the bottle over and read the back for one word. PEA, or polyethylamine. If it's in there in real concentration, the bottle will actually do something. If the back of the bottle says anything else, or hides the whole thing behind the words proprietary blend so you can't tell what you're buying, put it down and walk away. And if you just fill up with top-tier gas to begin with, you can walk right past that entire aisle and keep your money in your pocket. Run every bottle through 2 questions before you buy it. First, does the back of the bottle actually name the ingredient that does the work, or does it hide it? And second, is the thing it's marketed to do the same as what that ingredient actually does inside your engine? Half that shelf fails one of those 2 questions flat. The cheap cleaner can't do what it claims. The octane booster does something to your engine the label never mentions. The label on the front and the truth on the back are 2 different stories wearing the same promise. And the only way to tell them apart is to turn the bottle around. Tell me in the comments if you've ever poured something into your tank on the strength of a label and had it do the opposite of what it promised. Better mileage that never showed up, more power you couldn't feel, or a check engine light a week later. I read every one of these, and the ones where somebody got burned chasing a claim are exactly the ones worth hearing, because they're how the rest of us learn what to leave on the shelf. And if somebody in your life keeps a case of Octane Booster in the garage and swears by it, send them this before their next fill-up. Next time, I went looking at which gas stations actually meet the top-tier standard, and which ones are just borrowing the phrase and printing it on the sign. The list of the real ones is a lot shorter than the signs would have you believe. And once you see who's really on it, you'll know exactly where to fill up and where to drive on by.